Well, Dr. Mostarin Ara, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today and to talk about your journey in forestry. Just to introduce you to our listeners, you're currently a forester working at Scion in New Zealand, and you've been kind of all around the world to get where you are. So, welcome to the podcast. I'm glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mickey, to invite me. And I'm really, really glad to be here and talk about my journey a little bit. So, as you said, I'm working as a forest scientist at Scion. I just started 2 months ago. And currently, it's a bit tricky to just explain what I'm doing. Because last couple of years, when I did my master's, PhD, and postdoc, it was very easy to say what is your role. Like it was very very specific, one project, and you kind of a leader or leading the project, and so it was very easy. But so far, what I understand that my role is not to a particular project, rather like it's you participate in different project and solve a piece of puzzle in a complete block. So in Scion you have kind of like a introductory phase, so then you get to know people and what they're doing, and then you involve different projects, into different projects. So that's what I'm doing now, meeting people and getting to know what kind of projects are currently available and where I can contribute. So there is a growing interest in New Zealand to the transition forest from exotic to the native species, and like a final outcome come is the carbon stock. And so mostly I'm involved in the project where I'm looking at how the transition forest contribute to the carbon stock, and also trying to parameterize the 3PG, the process-based model, and for the indigenous species and so on. So it seems like it's going to be within my silvicultural expertise, but they're going to be diverse project and things. So that's what I'm doing currently here. Yes, it seems like there's expectation that you need to do in multiple projects, and it's not always going to be the lead. You're just gonna contribute some small parts. Yeah,
Right. And that's it makes life interesting being a part of many projects. I know I work in consulting, so some days I come in and I think I know what I'm going to do, and then I have a new project that needs to be done by the end of the day. So I have to completely change my calendar to work on something that I didn't expect. It
yeah,
makes life interesting and fun and stressful at times, but
yeah,
it's a lot different than in your, in your studies in your PhD or your master's, where you have one topic and it's like, all right, your goal is just to become the expert on this and to write the best paper on this.
yeah. No, I totally understand, and I can relate somehow. Like I'm a very structured person. I want to know what my day gonna look like, but there are some things coming on the way. But I think it's also, you are building your capacity, I think, to work in a different environment. And I think slowly I'm trying to see also the bigger picture, because when you were you know not doing the complete work, but putting your contribution in different project, which leading to a bigger goal. So that's another aspect. I think I'm seeing it that way, and it's interesting, and I'm learning, I think, with this new thing. Yeah.
So one of the things that I really enjoy about you is that you have the spirit of adventure. You have no problem moving to learn something new. So if you could, why don't you just start us from the beginning? How did you get interested into forestry?
Yeah, I think the people, the forester I met so far, they all have kind of a story how they ended up forestry, and I also have yeah, a little bit one of the story. Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie, forestry wasn't my first choice when I thought about my higher education. And to be honest, before I entered into forestry graduation school, 6 months prior to that, I even didn't know there is a real, real subject that you can actually study and do your bachelor or master's. So I really wanted to be a mechanical engineer. Like when I was a teenager in high school, I really liked the mechanics things, and I was preparing for that. But in Bangladesh, where I'm from, the admission system is a little bit different. You literally sit for the exam and you get the marks, and based on your marks, you get the school or subject. So I didn't have the points to enroll in the engineering school, but I had the score for life science school. And yeah, but I think when I looked all the subjects that we had in our school, like pharmacy, genetic engineering, fisheries, marine technology, forestry, agriculture, and all these things. And I was looking their syllabus, what they have, and then I found that in forestry they have a lot of excursion. So every semester you are going some part of Bangladesh looking forest, and we have different kinds of forest in Bangladesh, from mangrove to evergreen to deciduous to rainforest, you know. So I was like, wow, that's cool. And also like we had like the wood technology part along with the forestry. So we was stripped to the sawmills and pulp and paper industries. I was like, wow, that's exciting. I'm gonna be able to see a lot, lot. So I just signed up for that, and I know that in that time it was not a really good time for forest career in Bangladesh, and people are asking, "Oh, you should do something else, not forestry." I was like, "No, that looks fascinating to me." So I think that's how I ended up in forestry. But I think very soon I loved it, and I never regretted to study in forestry. Yeah, I think that's how I started in a university. In Bangladesh. It's called Khulna University, very south part of Bangladesh, where it's very close from the mangrove forest, Sundarban. Just a reference, because some people know where it is. Yeah, so that's how I ended up in forestry. Yeah.
That's excellent. Of course, those of us who grew up in living in the forest. I'm from what's called the piney woods of East Texas, where we're just lots of forests. But whenever people come to find the field and learn how about tending the forest, and they generally, I think, enjoy it because it's such a fun thing, and getting to be outside and, like you said, learning and going on excursions is just such a valuable experience. But also, there's the connection to the forest, to the nature, that it really, I think, makes you happy. And I believe there's studies on this, that it makes you happy. It takes away your stress, and being able to do that in your studies, I think, is amazing. So we're happy that you didn't make the marks for mechanical engineering.
Yeah, yeah. No, sometimes I actually think about that now when I'm in this position of my life. I think I'm happy that I didn't enroll in mechanical engineering, because I think I'm happy with being a forester. And as you say, that I think I really love that about my job, that I have the opportunity to go out and being in the forest and have the connection. I think as a forester, I strongly believe you'll never feel the connection if you don't go to the forest. Like, forestry is a very practical thing, I believe. Like, yeah, so I'm glad that I choose forestry. Yeah.
And so you have a bachelor's degree in forestry, and you also did a master's in Bangladesh.
Yeah, so when I was like finishing my bachelor, I kind of decided that I want to continue in higher education. And for that time, I was always thinking to, do PhD, and I want to be that person in research. But then in Bangladesh, at least in that time, to 2013, when I graduated, there was not much opportunity on research in PhD, postdoc, all those kind of things. So I was preparing to go abroad, and I was doing my English language test and all these things. And I was looking for scholarship, especially in the Europe, and all this takes time. So I was like, okay, while I'm waiting, I'm gonna, you know, keep going. So I started my master's there in forestry. Yeah, and then when I just finished my master's there, I got a scholarship, actually few in different parts of Europe, and then yeah, I moved to Europe for my another master's degree, and it was about GIS and remote sensing for environment modeling and management. And I actually got other scholarship also to study on forest management and things like that. But it was a little bit tricky that, yeah, which one should I take? But then I thought that, okay, I know a bit of forestry, maybe I can learn some different tools and combine it with forestry later on. Yeah, so that's how I ended up having another master's. It was a joint master's with the Erasmus Mundus program. And I started with Lund University in Sweden. I did my first year there. And then I moved to University of Twente in Netherlands. Yeah, where I mostly did my thesis work there.
That must have been a really big change for you coming from Bangladesh to Sweden and the Netherlands.
Yeah, I think it was a life-changing decision in many ways. You can imagine the culture is totally different, education system is different, and everything is different and new. You are away from your friends and family. You basically start from scratch, right? It was hard at the beginning, and you know, you have been in Nordic countries. They are really good people, but very introverted. For them, it takes time to be friends. So it's there. So all the things were hard at the beginning, and also GIS remote sensing. That's also very new to me. But I think that time make me confidence later in my life that okay, you can do things. Even you can start from scratch, but it's you can. So I think yeah, uh, that that made me confidence later in my life to doing things and believing in me. Yeah.
That's good. It was a good confidence boost. And of course, like you said, it is a very challenging. For me, moving to the Nordics, the culture is not so different from the US, and the education system's a little bit different. But of course, I went for a permanent job. I wasn't in school there, but I was working quite closely with the universities, and but all very similar to me. But I also happen to be an introvert. So being an introvert in an introverted population makes it very difficult to meet people and make friends. And yeah, but the life itself is can be quite different, especially because they work around the seasons, the winter and the summer. And that for me was something completely new that I didn't know how to deal with the darkness and the cold and the rain. And, I just felt like hibernating in the winter. And I realized really quickly why they like to go out and go skiing.
Yeah, no, I'm from subtropics, so sun was always there, like at some point we're tired of sun, especially in this summer. So before I moved to Sweden, I really didn't realize how important sun in your life, because you basically don't see sun in few months. So there's lot of thing there. It's not just the culture, it's not just the education, but everything. Climate is a major factor on your mood and lifestyle and everything that I realized there. Yeah, so it was a different uh, experience at the beginning, but over time, when you start to know people and all the international people coming together, having dinner and know people, and it got better and better with time. But yeah, at the beginning, it was definitely hard, I have to admit. Yeah.
Well, and so you said you were, before you moved, you were learning to, or you were going to take the English language test. So you were learning English already. How long had you been learning English before you moved to Sweden?
Actually, the English is with your curriculum from grade one.
Oh, okay.
So in Bangladesh, I think we got it from the British colonization. Because so you learn ABC from grade one, and I was in the university that was an English medium. So it was all in English, but you had to, because English was on my mother tongue, so I had to give a test to prove that, yeah, I can
I
do all
see.
the, yeah. So it just
But you have been speaking for most of your life, basically.
yeah, so we are not speaking in everyday life with people, but in academic activities, all of your classes, your exam, and all things were in English, but communication was in Bangla. That's my language. Yeah.
And so when you moved to Sweden, I'm sure you started picking up Swedish and speaking around the water fountain. I know is a big thing there.
Yeah. I should say I don't know how to speak Swedish, but I actually can understand a little bit, and also, very small communication I can do, but I don't think I can really speak Swedish. No, I shouldn't say that. Yeah, yeah, but yeah, I was trying to learn, but it was, yeah. Of course, many of my colleagues they learned it over the time, but I think I was learning another language that time, so I wasn't very focused on Swedish. Yeah.
I had probably a similar experience. It was, of course, everyone wants you to speak Norwegian, and I actually learned Norwegian quite well. I couldn't really speak it, but I could read it, and when I left, I was finally starting to write some, but I could read in Norwegian pretty easily. I think because of the connection to English, it's very closely related, right? Well, English evolved from some of the Nordic languages, so um, grammar and sentence structure are all kind of similar. Um, but at the end of the day, I would try to speak, and then I would speak in my very American accent, and they would go, wait, you're American. Let's talk in Norwegian, or let's talk English. Like, yeah. I remember going to one of the meetings there at Omeo. Probably you were there. I don't remember, but I was talking with somebody. I can't remember who, and they were like, "Oh, well, how good's your Swedish? We're going to go listen to a talk in Swedish." I said, "Well, it's not as good as my Danish." And they said, "Well, how's your Danish?" And I said, "What? I don't speak Danish." Like, so it was quite funny. Um, I had, but it was there's where we met, so it had to have been at one of the meetings that I met you. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, I think it was a PhD course in Tornekojden.
Oh yeah,
I'm pretty sure I'm not pronouncing it exactly how Swedish people, yeah, do. But yeah, I think we met in a PhD course where you guys were teaching. You came from
that's right.
Norway.
Yeah, we were
That's,
invited. Claire and I and
yeah,
Andreas were invited
Andreas.
to come
Yeah, you
give
guys
some
were there.
lectures. That was a
Yeah,
lot of fun. I enjoyed interacting with all of you, and of course the people from across the Nordics.
yeah,
That was a very fun course. Yeah.
yeah. And it was the fun part, going to the forest and seeing the management, what you learn in the classroom. I think that was really really valuable. Yeah, yeah. That's I loved about Swedish education system, that whatever they learn in the class, like they go back to the forest and practice it. Like I was involved in teaching some of the courses, and I went to the forest with the student, and I was really enjoyed it. Like they were learning on this thinning, continuous cover forest, all these things in classroom, and then go back to the forest and practicing all these things. Yeah.
So when you did your master's, you had already decided you wanted to get a PhD. So is there a reason you wanted to stay in Sweden? Because you went from Lund to SLU. Is there a reason, or it was just opportunity?
Yeah. So yeah, with my after finishing my first year with my master's, I moved to Netherlands where I was doing my thesis work. And during my thesis, I was looking for PhD. So I wasn't, like, from the beginning, I was not very restricted to a particular country. It was more like where I get the opportunity and the project I like. So I was at that time I was working on remote sensing data for my thesis. So I really enjoyed working on remote sensing, and I was looking for opportunity related to remote sensing or coming back to forestry. Like I was very open. So and then I saw a advertisement of PhD position at SLU, and to be honest, that time I was like, oh, they're not gonna call me. They're so good at forestry. So I just dropped the application and kind of forgot about it, and looking position in other places. And then I heard from them that they shortlisted me for interview. And then I was like, okay, confidence back a little bit. Yeah. So I went for the interview, and I think I got the position. Yeah. So it was like I was open for any opportunity that I like. So there was no particular reason to go back to Sweden. Yeah, but it's yeah. Actually, when I left Sweden first time after my master's, me and my colleague from Netherlands, we were like, oh, let's go to Copenhagen one more time. I don't think I'm gonna come back. Yeah, let's go and walk. But yeah, I came back there and did my did my PhD there. Yeah, so it was just the opportunity.
And so you went from doing more remote sensing GIS, and you went for your PhD. You worked with silviculture.
Yeah, I work with silviculture, but I add a little bit of GIS onto that. Yeah, but mostly very very silviculture work there. Yeah. So yeah, when the PhD that I was doing, it was part of a bigger project. So we were like total six PhD student, and looking different aspect of silviculture in southern Sweden. So my part was early establishment and young forest management. There was also like regeneration, silviculture, wood quality, and like a kind of a complete package. So I was mostly doing one part. And during my PhD, I work pre-commercial thinning, and how you use this pre-commercial thinning to create a mixed stand which can provide you timber but also other ecosystem services. And also looked on the regeneration, yeah, part of the Swedish young forest in the whole Sweden, and also did like how planting design impact your final production and wood quality. So that was the main focus of my PhD. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting for me because in the southern U.S. we're pretty much managed, for one species at a time. We're not generally interested in mixtures. When I went to Norway, it was mostly, you know, monocultures, Norway spruce, Scots pine, just like you find in Sweden. But now there's this big interest in mixed forests to, again, to guard against negative effects of climate change, whether it be droughts or insect attacks or whatever. But also, one thing I find interesting in Europe, and I think, please, for the people in Sweden, don't hate me if I get this wrong, but I believe it's a German concept of over yielding, where if you have one species, it produces a yield, another species on the same site would produce a yield. But when you mix them over yielding, they produce more together than they would on their own. You work any with that?
Yeah, so like I might be wrong, but it's my humble opinion that when I work on the mixed stand management in Sweden, and also all the literature that I found in Finland. So then you have your mixed stand and you have your monoculture, and the density of the monoculture and mixed stand is same. But when you look at the German literature or Central European, usually the density varies. So they kind of add one more species and ended up having more density. And that's play a big role, right, when you talk about overyielding. So maybe it's somehow management is playing a role there. But also, I think all the the German literature, it's there are some few paper it talks about that mixed standard has more carrying capacity than monoculture. So I think that's their theory behind it to having more density. So that's the difference I have seen when I was reading literature in my PhD. That it's just the density making yeah, playing a big role to overyield or not. Yeah. So if you look at the literature in Nordic countries, it's not always that straightforward that it giving you overyield. It's, yeah, different than the findings from the Central Europe. Yeah.
Probably depends heavily on the site. One of the complications in Norway is if you look at the country of Norway, it's just a long mountain chain on the edge of Sweden, and about every other tree is growing on top of a rock. So the sites are not quite as good as they are in Sweden, where it's a bit more flat and more fertile.
Yeah, especially in the southern Sweden. And also, I think species is an important factor there, the species you are mixing. And yeah, of course, you mentioned site is another important factor. Yeah. But also the thing you mentioned that down in the southern Sweden, there is a growing interest in mixed forest. I think because it's also related to their policy that if you want to certify your timber, you have to have 10% broadleaf in your stand in southern Sweden, and I think it's 5% in northern Sweden. So that's another driving force, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I assume they implemented those policies to try to fulfill some kind of desire in terms of guarding against effects of climate
Mhm.
change or
Mhm.
something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. With all the demand change from one to multiple ecosystem surveys. Yeah, I think that's what they did. Yeah.
Which I know people in other countries might be curious as to, why are the effects so big? Well, in the Nordic countries being so far north, already we're seeing like the growing season is doubled. And so you're getting much warmer summers, you're having more drought. Um, Trees are growing much differently than they were before. And so it's definitely starting to see some of the effects of this changing climate. And, they're very much concerned what's going to happen with the forest.
Yeah, yeah. So I remember when I started my PhD in 2018, it was really, really dry, hot summer, and many of the Swedish people are saying they never seen in their lifetime this drought, and yeah, and then that year, I think the bark beetle started to spread yeah, very rapidly. So things are changing. You already can see it there. Yeah, the climate change is there. You can't really deny it.
How was well? So you did silviculture, but you also worked quite a bit with growth and yield because you were using models and doing different scenarios. You had a chance to work with your Eureka and those type models.
Yeah, so you know, Eureka is like a planning tool for whole Swedish forest. So I played with that model a little bit with my PhD. I was looking different yeah, management system and running different scenarios to see how which yeah, management scenario gives you like timber, but also you're not losing your other ecosystem services. So playing with that with two species, Norway spruce and birch mixture. Yeah. So and also I did a little bit of allometric equation development for birch to for one of my studies. So I was a little bit learning about growth and yield as well.
And so when you finished up there, you then decided to do a postdoc, and you ended up in Canada. So tell me how that happened, because that's the last time we met was at the second North American Mensurations Conference when you were in Canada, and I didn't realize that you had moved to New Zealand when I contacted you for.
Yeah, it's like these things happen so quick recently. Yeah, so yeah, I was finishing my PhD and I was thinking, oh, what to do next. I was thinking maybe I try. You know, it also it's recommended kind of in SLU that you go somewhere else to do your postdoc and get a new experience. So and one of my supervisor from University of Alberta, Dr. Brad Pino, I met him in a conference. So when I was like writing my thesis, I was like, maybe I start to contact people now. You know how this works. So I wrote an email that, hey, I'm finishing up in April. I'm looking for a postdoc. And then yeah, and it was a very quick response from him, like in a 5 minute. He said, yeah, I'm expecting some grant in the beginning of the year 2022. So when I wrote him, it was fall in 2021. I was writing my thesis. Yeah, so then we started to communicate, and he actually also sent my CV to Robert Prose, you know him. So, and then they ended up being together and hired me for 2 years. So that's how I ended up in Canada. And then the project was like divided into one part for Dr. Brad Pino was silviculture, and for Dr. Robert Frost was growth and yield modeling. So for growth and yield modeling part, I was looking all the growth and yield model available in Alberta and how they perform for a thin stand. So that was my part. And in the silviculture part, it's also somehow related to the growth and yield. So I was using one of the individual tree level model and running different scenarios for the thin and unthin stand and doing some recommendation for the forest managers. But I also tried to expand my expertise a little bit. So I work a little bit of a forest ecology. So I also looked how understory vegetation composition and soil nutrient varies in mixed forest of aspen and white spruce versus monoculture. So that was that was much yeah, what I did there. But I yeah, it was a 2 year contract, but after 1 year I think I got offer from Sion, and yeah, I moved here. Yeah, things were very good.
Well, that's exciting. How different was Alberta from uh, Alnar?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, it was quite a bit different. So uh, when um, yeah, I think the major difference, what I found that in Sweden, in workplace, people were very friendly, like, have this fika and all the socialization. And outside work, people were very introvert, hard to talk to people. I found it very opposite in Edmonton. I should say about Canada because I was living in Edmonton. So people are friendly in work too, but they're not very social as, there was no coffee break, there's no lunch break. You would do everything in your desk. Like you have your lunch in the desk. You don't talk to your colleagues. Like, you know, very, very individual uh, thing. And I think I was trying to push people for coffee break and things like that. So it's not there. But in the outside work, when you go to the street or in the shopping mall, and like people are talking, like strangers talking to you, and jumping into your conversation when you're talking to your friends, that was a big change for me. The communication or interaction with people, like I was talking to my friend and crossing to the street when there was a red light. There, a stranger just jumped into our discussion, and that was very, very strange to me. And I didn't know how to respond, but I figure out that's very normal there. People are in the queue and talking to each other. So that's, I'd say, the cultural point of view. That's the difference I found. But I have to admit that people of Edmonton were very, very friendly and welcoming. That I was 1 year, I never felt that I'm not at home. Like, it was very diverse. Yeah, so I enjoyed my time in terms of that, and how people are very friendly, and it was easy for me to make friends there. I think, yeah, yeah. Of course, the weather, weather was different. Like southern Sweden was cold, uh, but it was a little bit gray in the winter and also raining. But in Edmonton, it's very different. It's sunny almost every day. When it's even -55, the sun is there, but very, very cold and very dry. Yeah. So it's a different experience. I think I kind of enjoyed it in a way that I felt like if you have a good clothing, you can kind of beat the cold. But if it's gray, you can't beat that grayness. Yeah. But I could see sun every day. That was promising. And the days were a little bit longer. Yeah. So yeah, I think, yeah. But I also realized, at least in the university, the working style was a little bit different than Sweden. That's for sure.
I've never worked in Canada, but I assume it's probably not unsimilar or dissimilar to the U.S. in terms of the work culture, um, which is obviously quite different from the Nordic countries, which put a lot of emphasis on quality of life. Whereas I believe here in North America, we put a lot of emphasis on getting the job done and doing as much as you can and producing good quality work. Not that they don't do the same in the Nordic countries, but they definitely have a much larger emphasis on quality of the work life. They want to make sure you're happy and you feel good.
Yeah, but just from, I have a very limited experience, but I feel like when you talk about productivity, I feel like people from the Nordic countries, they're not, they are, I think, as productive as other part of the world, but I think it's a systematic way, or I don't know how to define it, but I I would argue that they are productive too, but it's just a different style. I realize, like, people. people talk to each other anyways, but when you have a fika or particular time, you talk in that time, and then you come back to your desk and you're totally focused probably in your yeah. I don't know. I have to think more before I say something about that.
No, I agree. And I hope people are not taking my comments out of context here. I think they are definitely as, if not more, productive in the Nordic countries. I just feel like here in North America, the idea is that if you're not working, if you're not sitting at your desk having lunch, then you're not being productive. Uh, because you're elsewhere doing something else, which is not the same. Because if you feel good about your work and you feel good in the workplace, then of course you can be more efficient at your job. And if you're just sitting at your desk for the sake of sitting at your desk, and you know, that's not productivity necessarily. That's just you being in a chair.
Yeah. That's basically my theory that I don't want to relate my productivity with time because I could be in the office for 10 hours, but maybe uh, 3 hours I'm doing something else, right? So it's a different metric, maybe how we measure that to you're productive or not. Yeah, but that's interesting difference.
And explain to our our international listeners who aren't familiar with fika, what is fika?
Yeah. I totally forgot that. I didn't. Yeah, like fika is like a coffee break or tea break, and it's a very Nordic culture. I think that it's a way of socializing with people, and you know, like in our office, it was two times this coffee break, 9 in the morning and 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and you just all of your colleagues whoever have times, it's not that everyone is joining, but there was a option open, you come, you talk, yeah, you just have coffee, some snacks, cakes. It was also really nice that when people get a fund or something big happening, publishing a paper, they were bringing cakes, so yeah, uh, that's called fika when you have a tea and socialize with people. Yeah.
I remember coming to Sweden for the first time, and they were talking about the fika, and so we got to join in on the fika, and we did something similar in Norway, but it wasn't as nice as how they do it in Sweden because there wasn't always cake or people weren't bringing these things. The idea of a coffee and conversation was more what they were doing in Norway, and of course that's just my experience in other businesses or the universities. It might have been different, but I really enjoyed going to Sweden and getting to participate in that. It was really nice, and to see the people very happy to be there and interacting. And it's those conversations that also help inspire you in whatever your work. Because if you're bouncing ideas off of people, I'm having this problem, I'm having that problem, and you're surrounded by intelligent people, you're going to get at least hopefully some intelligent responses.
No, really, I really agree on that. Like, when you think about a coffee break, you think it's a waste of time. But I think I learned so much from joining of this coffee. It's not that I was joining every day, but yeah, like whenever you get a chance, you join and you learn thing. It's not only your project, but what's happening in forestry in general, or even cultural thing that I would never probably learn without going to this socialization. And yeah, so it was really nice. Yeah.
And so you were 1 year in Edmonton, and then you got your job in Sion in Rotorua. And so you've moved there and you've been there since February of this year.
Yeah. So yeah, I moved here with my husband this February. Yeah. So it's a small town in the North Island, kind of a central of the North Island, and I'm not a very city person, so I'm really enjoying here. Not very crowded, or everything is very nearby, like walking distance, and yeah. So it's the main campus of Zion. and it's middle of the Redwood Park. So you can't ask more than more than what I got here. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting. And you're still settling in, so you're still learning cultural stuff. But has it also been a pretty big difference between your experiences in Canada and Sweden and the Netherlands?
Um, yeah, it's probably a little bit early to tell because I'm still busy with my, settling down things, not focusing other thing. But so far, my impression is people are open. Um, People are not, you know, as open as other English countries probably, but still, I would say they're open and very helpful. I found so far, like sometimes way too helpful. Like you sometimes almost you feel like, oh, you were an adult, you can handle it, but they really want to help you. Uh, so that's really good thing. And yeah, I'm just reading some books to know the local culture, especially the Maori people. So I'm still trying to settle down, but so far my impression is good. Yeah, and people at work very nice, and I think at least in my 2 month experience, I feel like it's very similar to Swedish culture, having the balance between your work and private life. I think no one is expecting me to work, more than I should, and if you are not feeling well, they're very aware that okay, take it slow, you can take a short day. And also good thing that here, if you work 9 days in straight, the 10th day, like Friday, is also a flexi day, so you can take it off. So really there is a balance between your work life and private life. So far I'm enjoying it. Yeah,
Yeah, that's exciting.
yeah.
Well, so you've taken us around the world on your journey. So, I know a lot of people, and everybody's journey is different, and that's
Mhm.
great. But there are quite a few people that maybe get a little bit nervous when they think about moving how you have, because you've gone from Bangladesh to the Nordics to Canada, now to New Zealand. So those are extreme changes in
Mhm.
terms of location, cultures, and all of that. So,
Mhm.
um, does it make you nervous to move like that? Do you get nervous and a little scared, maybe, or does it get you excited?
Uh,
Or both?
both. I think
Yeah,
in one hand you want to explore, and then another
yeah,
side that your new place, everything start from the scratch. Like so. But I think maybe I'm a little bit nomadic.
yeah.
I like to travel. I like to see how things works, and I think in a forestry perspective, I also wanna know the forest management from different parts of the world. Maybe I'm not expert on a particular country or particular thing, but I wanna have a general idea how forest and forestry works in different parts of the world. So I think that made it a little bit easier to move. Yeah, and I like to know and see different places. Like it's one of my hobby in my personal life to go and see how people interact, how things are there, the food and everything. So that I think made it a little bit easier for me to move from different from one part to the other part of the world. Yeah.
And what do you feel? So when you're moving, what do you feel like you thought was the biggest challenges in moving from one country to the other?
Hmm. There are, I would say there are a few things, like when it's my personal thought might be very different for different people, especially to make friend. I think I'm someone who prefer quality than quantity, and with time I think I'm getting pickier and pickier to make friends. you know. So I think that's uh, becoming a challenge, to have the friend circle, or we. I think, yeah, every time you move, it needs a lot of effort to make a relationship, right? Any kinds of relationship. You give this effort and you have some fun, and then it's time to leave. Yeah, so that's one of the challenge, I think. Like when I moved to Canada, it was just for 1 year, so it took almost 6 months to have some friends, and as to, yeah, then it's time to pack. Of course, I still have all the connection, and I'm very grateful to have all the friends from all over the world. But and then we moved to New Zealand. Now it's again the same process. So I think that's one of the challenge, and of course, getting used to it, all the systems, and doing all the, and then as an immigrant, you know how it is when you go from one country to another, all the work related administrative things, waiting for the immigration decisions, and I think that seems like challenging to me. Like when I think I know I will forget that maybe very soon. But when I moved to Rotorua, I was telling my husband that I'm not moving from here anymore. Doing everything from the scratch. So I think I'm settling here. Yeah. So I think those things are there, at least for me.
I told my wife the same thing. We moved from Norway to Alabama in the U.S., and then we were in an apartment for a few months, and then we built a house, and we moved into our house, and it was some months after that, and she's talking about like, oh, if I build a new house, what would I do? And I said, whoa, 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 whoa,
No,
this is
no.
the house. We're not moving anymore. This is it.
Yeah.
I think we in like the past decade until we moved into that house, we had moved 11 times. So more than once per year on average. And I was
Yeah.
just like, no, I'm not doing it again. Throw the boxes away. We don't need the boxes anymore. We're here.
No, no, I totally understand. Like, still, I'm waiting for all of my boxes to come from Canada. So it's like, yeah. So this whole process, it's kind of every time you were, and then like I had stuff in Sweden, and I had to give those things away when I was moving, because you can't bring all the things, and you do the same thing, and then you move again and do the same thing. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. But for now, I think I want to focus here and settle down for a while. Um, yeah.
And so also though, as you're, picking up your life and moving it from place to place, you're also learning these new forestry systems because everywhere you go has a different approach to forestry. They have their own unique problems. So have you come up with like the formula for quickly getting in and integrating and understanding?
Yeah. So, that was one of the things when I was interviewing for this position, we were talking about that. Like, I had to give an presentation about, why my qualification background and things. So my argument on that, like when you know how the like forest ecosystem works, if you know that, I think from there you can start, and then I think, when I moved from Bangladesh to Sweden, you can imagine the forest and forest management is like, you know, very, very different. So I feel like I adapted there and worked there and at least finished my PhD. So I have some idea how they do the forest management. So that made me like, if I can do that, it's not the impossible thing. So and I moved in different other places. So my thought on that if you go in depth, problem is more or less very similar across the continent. You just need to learn the species there and their ecology, physiology, and then yeah, it gets smoother and smoother with your background knowledge, and you can always bring your previous knowledge into the new place, and use that. Yeah,
And I think that's what's important. It's that knowledge that you get that you can either take with you, or if you go for a short time to a place, bring back. Um, my PhD advisor, Harold Burkhart, also went to Sion for a sabbatical in the 70s. So, and he always talked about his experience there and the things that he learned. My good friend Charles Sabatia, who's also lives here in Alabama, he works for another company as a biometrician. He went to work in for Sion for a few years. No, I'm sorry, for just about a year. But he, of course, talks great about his experience there as well. So I have a feeling that you're going to have a wonderful experience and you're going to learn a lot. And if you ever decide to go somewhere else, you'll be taking that experience with you.
yeah, yeah. I think that's the beauty of it, that you can go learn, experience the thing, and you can always take it with you. It's not that I'm losing it, and I think even if I don't stay here forever, I'm very sure this experience will be useful in my new role. Yeah. So
Do you ever want to go back to Bangladesh? Do you want to go back home?
I mean, you always have a natural inclination, right, to go back to your home. But I think the type of work I want to do, or the work environment that I expect, so still I don't think it's the right time to go back. That's how I can put it. Like, yeah. So there are lots of NGOs, international NGOs are working there, and but I think I'm still want to do the research part. Like, so that's we have some limitation in that. Um, so I'm still gonna wait for the right time if there is.
Well, I know we have many listeners who will definitely be inspired by your journey and the story that you've told today about your journey. And I really appreciate the suggestions for traveling, and you're an inspiration to me, and I love to see other foresters with the spirit of adventure like I have. My wife and I both love traveling and learning new things. We just by chance ended up in Alabama. It wasn't necessarily my choice of places to live, but like you, I found a really good job, and so I took it, and here we are. Um, it's been great getting to know more about you. I just have one final question, or really just yeah, if you could give some comment on for people who are thinking about going abroad to study, just something motivational for them, or some suggestion.
It's a big question. I
I
don't
know,
know.
right? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Everyone's journey is different. Everyone thought is different, and I'm a very, you know, um, I don't think I have the expertise or knowledge to uh, talk about that. But from at least from my personal experience, I think sometimes it's hard to start, but I think we should start. We have to start from some point, and with time, with your experience, you will find a way where to go. But and also for me at least, I knew where I want to go, so that's kind of helped me to navigate through. So maybe it's good to talk to yourself first, that where you want to see yourself, and then you can move. Like, for me, I knew I want to do PhD. I knew I want to do research. And for me, country wasn't a barrier, so I'm jumping from here to there. That's okay as long as in the track what I want to do. Yeah. So that's what
Yeah, and I
I
think it's important,
would
everything that you
suggest,
said,
that
but the
start
point that I
with
pick
a
out is the
goal. Like,
goal. What are you trying
start
to
from
do?
somewhere, but you
And,
should
you
have
know,
a
if
vision where you
maybe
wanna
your goal
wanna
means
go.
that you don't
Yeah,
need to
I don't
travel,
know.
that's
It will
great. But
be
if your goal is,
helpful for the
I
listener,
want
but
to go
that's
this
how
step, this
I
step, this
think
step, and my end
that
goal is here,
yeah,
you have to
that's
follow the
important.
opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's all about what you want to do. Like, focus on that, and based on that, you can choose your path. It's not that everyone need to do PhD, everyone need to travel, or everyone need to be in the research. You can be what you want. Then you can decide which way you need to go. But yeah, so yeah, journey could be very different for different persons. Yeah.
Well, thank you again so much for the conversation. Once you've had a little bit of time working there at Scion, I would love to talk again and hear about your experiences.
Yeah, I would love to share my experience here. Yeah.
Thank you again for coming. It was great.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Okay. Bye, everybody.